UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned of a growing digital gender divide, noting the dominance of men in digital technologies, particularly AI. He warned that such male dominated algorithms could perpetuate inequalities that are playing out offline. To talk us through this, Annette Young, the host of our 51% programme, is with me now. And Annette, look, our online worlds have long been hostile to women, but the impact of AI is adding a whole other layer, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we talk about hostile online world. You just referred to perhaps one of the number one figures when it comes to hostility towards women on the internet, and that being, of course, Andrew Tate. But when you talk about AI, you think, Nadia, about the people who actually create AI, and who do they tend to be? Well, predominantly men. So, as Tracy Spicer, the author of a book on the subject entitled, appropriately enough, Man-Made, says algorithms are opinions with a code. AI doesn't come from just thin air. What it is basically the people who create AI, those scientists and computer engineers and so on, are sort of perpetuating their own internal biases that all of us still have. For instance, if you ask AI, who is a doctor, most likely the image coming up, it will be referred to as a man. Again, if you talk about who's a nurse, it will be most likely a woman. Same thing happens when you talk about judges. The most likely the images are going to show are that of men. So it's reinforcing these deeply enforced and internalised cultural biases that we have about the role of women in today's society. And they're also using their material based on already published information, meaning that they can replicate and amplify these existing gender biases. And it also means not only just for women, but also other communities as such. I mean, people of colour have already talked about the problems with AI and detecting skin cancer because it's all determined on white skin. So how do we overcome this? Clearly, we have to look at the industry itself. It has to move very quickly towards improving equality within the profession, both in its approach and perspective. And most importantly, companies need to do more to attract women in tech jobs, to diversify these findings, and by and large, be aware of that problem to begin with.
And Annette, let's talk a bit about your show this week, the 51%, because it's looking at a new report on an ideological gap that appears to be emerging between women under the age of 30 and their male peers. Now, according to this study, women tend to have more progressive views on issues like equality, immigration, and men, young men, are becoming increasingly conservative. And that, the report says, is being fueled by the internet.
Absolutely. It's been reinforced by the world online. This is a survey that was carried out in 31 countries of 24,000 people aged 18 and above. Now, traditionally, we always expect the younger generation to be more progressive, or as some who would nowadays call more woke. But the worrying thing about this survey, which was conducted by Ipsos along with a number of other partners, is that today's under 30s are undergoing a far greater gender divergence, with young women being far more progressive, whereas their Gen Z male peers are much more conservative. For instance, they're anti-immigration. They think that feminism has gone too far. So in fact, Gen Z is not one generation, but two generations. To give you an example, in the US, data shows that basically across this country, women aged 18 to 30 are now 13% percentage points more liberal than their male counterparts. And that has enormous impact when it comes to who do these people vote for. But how do we address this? Well, this is one of the questions I put to one of my guests, Daniel Guinness, who is the founder of a British NGO called Beyond Equality, which goes into schools, universities, workplaces, and actually tries to get men and boys to transform their attitudes towards unhealthy behaviours. And this is what he had to say when I asked him the question.
Whether we're working with teenagers or people in their 50s or 60s, one of the most crucial things is actually to open up a non-judgmental space. Because remember, what's happening at the moment is that people are getting indoctrinated, for want of a better word, by their social media accounts. And if they happen to fall into a bubble where all they're getting is one particular view, you really need to actually give them that space to talk about that information and how they're seeing the world and how they experience the world. And then after that point, you're able to work through, point out some of the factual errors in that, and really actually give them a sense that they can create something better for themselves. But it's got to start from that point of non-judgment.
And Annette, one country where that divide is particularly apparent now is Germany.
Absolutely. And the one political party that's benefiting the most from that is the far right, because what they're doing is targeting disaffected young men. And my guest this week, we're talking about the reasons why men feel so turned off by the issue of equality. And a lot of it, yes, does come back to the economy, the fact of lack of economic opportunity, job opportunities and so on. But it's also, again, the internet, which is reinforcing this notion that men have somehow lost their power in society and they're much worse off as a result. So who's there waiting in the political wings to benefit from this is those people behind the far right. And in Germany, it's become a real issue. Our Berlin correspondent sent us this report about this subject.
They're called Bachelor Baby, Champ Life, or Maximilian Putz, and they present themselves as the true voice of masculinity.
Es ist eben nicht der nette, kuschelige Nachbar von nebenan, sondern es ist der Pirat, es ist der Werwolf, es ist der Vampir oder es ist der...
Katharina Wohlrab denounces these voices of toxic masculinity on her own social media platforms. She pokes fun at the misogynists. Her activism often earns her streams of hatred.
When I post videos with feminism as a keyword, it often happens that I find myself in the wrong bubble, and the comments are all the same, from men who question, in particular, the fundamental rights of women, such as abortion, for example.
There are regular attacks on equal rights. In 2023, a study found that 52% of Germans under the age of 35 considered that men were the boss at home. A widely publicised speech from the German extreme right rides a wave of deep insecurity linking inflation and immigration. At AfD meetings, they say they are mainly looking for stability.
And you can catch the full show with both that report in full along with the interview I had with Kelly Beaver from Ipsos and Daniel Guinness from Beyond Equality on France24.com.
Thanks very much, Annette Young, for us there.